Hello, I'm Esther Gidu. It's Friday, July 21st. This is Africa 54. Clashes between Kenya's opposition-led anti-tax protesters and police have left scores dead, including a prominent boxer who was shot to death. African leaders will meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg at the end of July for a summit billed as strengthening cooperation in peace and security. And a Ghanaian Grammy nominee, Guilty Beats, joins VOA's Jackson Vunganyi to talk about his work producing for top artists like Beyonce and Thames. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. The food situation across much of Africa is dire. One of the world's largest refugee camps is offering a stark example of the global food security crisis. Thousands of people have fled Somalia in recent months to escape drought and extremism, but have found little to eat when they arrive at the Dadaab camp in neighboring Kenya. One Somali man who arrived at Dadaab with his family says that he found peace but no food. Rations are being reduced for hundreds of thousands of people as international donors give less and aid groups are seeing more malnourished children. Cindy McCain, who heads the World Food Programme, says that Russia's recent termination of the deal to keep food commodities flowing from Ukraine will deepen the crisis at refugee camps, especially in Africa. Protests in Kenya slowed down on Friday, with opposition leader Raila Odinga saying he will not talk to President William Ruto because, quote, he is not to be trusted. Odinga is calling on Kenyans to continue to protest against the newly introduced government tax hikes and high cost of living. Clashes between police and protesters this month have left scores dead and many businesses destroyed. As we've mentioned, clashes between Kenya's opposition-led anti-tax protesters and police this month have left scores dead, including a prominent boxer who was shot last week in Nairobi. Kenya's boxing fraternity organized an exhibition bout to honor 35-year-old Raphael Shigali, who was the capital's reigning bantamweight champion. Francis Otoma reports from Nairobi.
Cheers and joy as Kenyan boxers in Nairobi's Eastlands neighborhood square off in the ring, but also emotional pain and anger. This exhibition march was held to honor boxer and coach Raphael Shigali, who Kenyan media reported was killed by the police gunfire during July 12th anti-tax protests on a street he grew up. The community called Jericho and the local boxing federation are raising funds to bury Shigali, who was Nairobi's reigning bantamweight champion.
Raf was easy and amiable to everyone. He would pass by the streets and exchange pleasantries with everyone. We value him because he made a name through boxing and went ahead to become a national champion, becoming even more famous across the country.
Married to Shigali for 13 years, Judy Wanjiko is left alone to care for their 3 children. She says her husband was not taking part in the protest, but simply walking home and running errands.
I was sitting in the house and the sound of gunshots were getting louder and louder. I called him at around 5:35 in the evening to check on his whereabouts. I begged him to come home.
Shigali was credited by many for helping to popularize boxing in his community. Wanjiko says she wants more than just his medals to remember him.
All I want is justice. Justice for Raf. Raf was killed by the bullet for no reason.
Rights group Amnesty International says at least 18 people have been killed this month in clashes with police during opposition-led protests against the rising cost of living and tax hikes. Rights groups blame Kenyan police for being quick to use live rounds during protests and have called for faster investigations into the deaths.
It is very unfortunate that we have lost a young man, a man who was very progressive, a man who was working with other youth in the community to actually try and alleviate the sufferings of many. And to see that he has lost his life in this manner, it's really, really unfortunate. The case of police using excessive force, unfortunately, again, is something that has been very persistent in Kenya.
Kenya's police spokesperson declined to comment on the killings, including Shigali's, except to say the matter was under investigation. But with few prosecutions of Kenyan police, the odds are against Shigali's widow seeing justice. And with both the government and the opposition so far unwilling to back down, Wanjiko's children are unlikely to be the last to be left without a father. Francis Ontomwa for VOA News, Nairobi.
For more on the protests in Kenya, I'm joined live via Skype from Nairobi by Macharia Monene, a professor of history and international relations at the United States International University in Nairobi. Professor, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
You know, Professor, Mr. Odinga has said he is not going to talk to President William Ruto because, quote, he cannot be trusted. Now, the question is, there are a lot of people wondering where these protests are going. Is this about the welfare of Kenyans, or is this a power struggle between President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga?
Well, it is both, but primarily it's power struggle between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. They know each other. They have been together for a long time. And Raila has refused to recognize that Ruto was elected, and so he doesn't accept it. And Ruto insists he is the president and to do his own things. So it's a power struggle that now has gone to the streets. Now, the problems that Ruto has encountered or generated, because he has made quite a number of mistakes since he was sworn in, have helped to create a disillusionment, which Raila is exploiting very well. So the demonstrations are part of the disillusionment, people reacting to the cost of living and some other mistakes that have no business being made. And then the desire, Raila desire to go to the State House. He has said it very clearly that he wants to go to the State House, not so much about other things. So it is both power struggle and then exploiting a bad situation made worse by some challenges facing the president, an aspect of incompetence.
Now, Mr. Monene, the neighboring country's president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, has made a comment about investors leaving and going to Tanzania, and because a neighboring country is burning. What's your reaction to this, and what is the way forward between Odinga and President William Ruto, if this is what we're seeing about Kenya?
Well, I think Samia Suluhu is concerned with what's happening in Kenya because it might go to Tanzania or some other country. So she's worried that the bad example being seen in Kenya could go down south, in which case it will not be very good. The fact that Tanzania is benefiting from Kenya's misery is something to worry about because it can go anywhere. She is also warning the Tanzanians, be careful that you don't end up falling into the trap that Kenya finds itself, because if it does, then we are going to have a lot of problems. Otherwise, Tanzanians are benefiting not by their choice, but the circumstances are favoring them that way. Now, as to the way forward, Kenyans in general need to keep calm. We have seen worse than this before, so it's possible that things will cool down. Both men, Ruto and Raila, need to come down to earth because they seem to be living in a different world other than Kenya. And because when Raila says go on the street, people go on the street. He says don't go, they don't go.
Right.
So we have that reality, and Ruto has to deal with that. How do you deal with somebody who has so much power?
Professor, we're going to have to leave it there. I think they are listening, and hopefully there'll be action. Professor Macharia Monene is a history and international relations professor at the United States International University in Nairobi. African leaders are to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg at the end of July for a summit billed as strengthening cooperation in peace, security and development. The second Russia-Africa summit comes as Moscow wages war against Ukraine. VOA Nairobi Bureau Chief Mariama Diallo reports.
African leaders will head to St. Petersburg at the end of the month for the Russia-Africa Summit, the second of its kind. The event will focus on enhancing cooperation in such areas as development, security and peace, even as Moscow persists in its aggression against Ukraine. International summits involve an element of political theater, analysts say, and African attendance will be a measure of success for the St. Petersburg gathering.
So I think there'll be a lot of focus on who attends. And last time in 2019, when the world looked very different, before the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, there were 43 African heads of state that went to Sochi for the 2019 summit.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has led to higher food and oil prices for many African nations.
They're under a lot of pressure with what's happening in Ukraine and the ramifications of the conflict there, which is commodity prices, particularly for Africans, but also everything that is happening with Wagner and so on. So this is an opportunity for Russia to try to assert its place on the global stage as well.
And trade will likely be a major topic of discussion.
I think there will be talk about trade. Russia's trade with Africa is really negligible. China and the EU are by far much bigger trading partners with Africa.
Russia is also looking to get around sanctions imposed by the US and its allies.
No African countries have imposed sanctions on Russia, and so it's a lucrative market for it. We saw a similar pattern after the invasion of Georgia in 2008 and the first invasion of Ukraine in 2014. As Western markets closed to Russian business, they sought markets elsewhere. And of course, Africa, Latin America, Asia were areas where they did seek to expand.
The UN General Assembly in February passed a resolution demanding that Russia end the war and leave Ukrainian territory. While 141 countries voted in favor, 2 African countries voted against it and 15 abstained.
I mean, Russia benefited from that. In the sense that it showed them like they have friends. It's simply an awakening on the African part, but particularly sending a message to the rest of the world that we also have our own foreign policies, and those reflect our interests, our national interests.
Dizolele adds, however, that the optics of one country summoning the leaders of an entire continent undermines Africa's efforts to assert itself on the global stage. Macharia, VOA News, Nairobi.
Still to come, Zambia's Copper Queens are dealt a blow as they prepare for their World Cup opening match. We'll be right back.
Although research shows that Africa has the highest number of women entrepreneurs globally, women remain massively underrepresented in venture capital investment compared to their male counterpart. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we examine why African women on the continent and in the diaspora continue to face challenges in securing funds to start their businesses. We speak to experts on what women need to do to succeed in their ventures. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
In other news, the World Health Organization is warning that cases of dengue fever could reach close to record highs this year, partly due to global warming benefiting mosquitoes that spread the disease. In May, the disease was found in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, for the first time on record, according to a health ministry report. At least 8 migrants are dead after a boat capsized off the coast of Senegal Wednesday. The bodies were recovered by the Senegalese Fire Department and Navy, and a search for survivors has been launched. Senegalese Interior Minister Felix Abdoulaye Diome says the bodies were brought to the northern fishing city of St. Louis. And Nigerian goalkeeper Chiamaka Dozie called it a dream come true after her penalty save from record-breaking goal scorer Christine Sinclair earned Nigeria a 0-0 draw against Canada at the Women's World Cup on Friday. It meant both sides won a point in their opening match in a tight-looking Group B, which also contains Ireland and co-hosts Australia. U.S. officials are continuing their effort to build a dialogue with China, even as U.S. lawmakers heard serious warnings about threats to cybersecurity. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson wraps up this week in U.S.-China relations.
Amid strained communication lines between Washington and Beijing, Chinese President Xi Jinping welcoming former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger to China. Xi noted that Kissinger, who turned 100 in May, has visited China more than 100 times since the 1970s.
The relations between our two countries would be central to the peace in the world.
U.S. climate envoy John Kerry also in Beijing, restoring dialogue on environmental issues after China suspended those talks last August in response to then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan.
We all hope nothing will get in the way of our ability to deal with the climate crisis, because, as I said previously, it doesn't wait for these things.
And U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who visited China last week, now in Vietnam talking about the U.S. approach.
We are actively trying to promote greater resilience in our supply chains, and that doesn't mean doing everything ourselves, and it doesn't mean, in our case, ending our, in any way, trading relations with China. But we do want to partner with more countries.
China's ambassador to the U.S. telling the Aspen Security Forum Wednesday his country is not seeking conflict with the United States.
China is opposed to any kind of trade war, technological war under the pretext of competition. China do not shy away from competition, but the definition of competition by the U.S. side, I think is not fair.
But the White House telling VOA Thursday military-to-military communication remains closed.
You want to be able to pick up the phone and talk to your opposite and try to take the tensions down and to avoid miscalculation. When you have that kind of military hardware sailing so close together, flying so close together, the potential for miscalculation and risk only shoot up if you can't talk to one another.
U.S. lawmakers heard warnings earlier this week from top energy officials that China posed a serious threat to the energy grid and cybersecurity, drawing a rebuke from the Chinese Foreign Ministry.
The U.S. should not make unfounded accusations or smear other countries for political purposes, but should stop cyber attacks on others and strengthen international cooperation to earnestly safeguard cybersecurity.
The U.S. Senate began debate this week on the massive annual defense bill that contains several China-related provisions.
These investments strengthen our warfighting advantages, exploit adversary vulnerabilities, and address critical operational challenges in the Indo-Pacific. They provide capabilities that will serve to strengthen our combat-credible deterrent by ensuring we can prevail in conflict.
China expected to be a top issue next week when Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin traveled to the Indo-Pacific region. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
Ahead of their debut in the FIFA Women's World Cup, Zambia's Copper Queens have been dealt a heavy blow on the eve of their Group C opener against Japan on Saturday after key attacking midfielder Grace Chanda was ruled out of the tournament. For more on Zambia's national women's team, senior sports reporter from Diamond TV in Lusaka, Zambia, Chimunya Bobi Ngandu joins us live via Skype. Good evening, Chimunya.
Good evening, Esther, and good evening to all the viewers of Voice of America.
The Copper Queens have a seasoned coach. What are Zambians expecting after Saturday's game?
This is a coach that has been with them for the last 5 years. He was able to lead them to the Olympics not so long ago, and after that they went all the way to the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, the WAFCON, where they were able to mint a bronze at the end of the tournament, beating teams like Nigeria, who were among the favorites in the semi-final. But when it mattered most, unfortunately, they did fail. So this is a team that, for me, has been built with a lot of confidence, and they know what is expected of them from the million Zambians. So Bruce Mape with the technical bench know what is at stake. They go into the group as underdogs, but in modern football, anything is possible, Esther.
So now I understand they've been asking for the way forward for their allowances. So what's the latest? What do you know about this request from the girls?
Yes, this was something that was made public by the captain of the side, and as we speak now, the sports minister, Mr. Elvis Nkando, is in New Zealand. Not so long ago, he did speak to the players and assuring them that government was in support of whatever was happening in New Zealand, and they've been assured that in an event that they get victories, for each game that the Copper Queens win, they'll be able to get $5,000. That is for each player. And this is away from the money that FIFA is going to give each individual player. So there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of optimism from the players themselves. And for now, the issue to do with the allowances is a foregone story, because we understand that government has come on board to ensure that everything that is owed to these players is given to them at the end of the tournament.
Bobby, very quickly, what is their being on international stage? What does that mean for the young Zambian women?
Already, Esther, it is history for Zambia having qualified to the World Cup, and now we have seen quite a number of young footballers that have taken interest in the game, and them qualifying for the World Cup and going to play against some of the big teams in world football is motivation that the Zambian game is growing, and we can only expect the girls to do well. And when they come back, I'm sure they will come back as celebrated individuals, hoping to continue inspiring other prospective female footballers in the country. Football in the country, women's football has not always been this supported, but I think for this team, a lot has been done, and there's been so much support, not only from government, but from the general public as well.
Nchimunya, thank you very much for your excellent sports reporting. Diamond TV.
You're welcome, Esther.
Right, Diamond TV senior sports reporter Nchimunya Bobby Ngandu reporting live for us from Lusaka, Zambia. It's time now for Entertainment Report, and joining us now is the host of VOA's Red Carpet Show, Jackson Bunganyi, with the latest news on a star Ghanaian music producer. Hello, Jackson.
Hello, Esther. Now, Esther, Guilty Beats is a Grammy-nominated Ghanaian music producer and DJ who has gained international recognition for his contributions to the Afrobeat and Afropop music genres. His real name is Ronald Banful, and he's considered one of the pioneers of the Banku music sound, a fusion of Ghanaian highlife and Nigerian Afrobeats. Guilty Beats recently joined me in studio to talk about his work producing for top artists like Beyonce and Thames. We also talked about Akwaba, his viral hit song that is considered as one of the biggest Afrobeat songs of all time. I started off by asking him to reflect on his first time working with Beyonce. Let's check it out.
It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
You know, I'll just take you back to the first day I actually heard my production on radio. And I was like, whoa. I couldn't believe that I was in the studio making that. And the next month, I'm hearing it on this, like, on radio. Do you understand? It's a great feeling. It's actually an amazing feeling. Like, knowing that everything that I did is actually from my mind. Like, straight, I manifested it physically, and then everybody is singing it.
And it catches the ears of people like Beyonce, and they love it to the point they're like, I want to work with this guy. How was that experience working with Beyonce, first of all? Because I know every producer's dream is to work with the queen.
Yeah. But it's a blessing, you know. It's a blessing to work with Beyonce, like, on a larger scale. Like, she's very powerful, and, you know, when I was discovered, they got through to me and we got in the studio. We worked on, I worked on the Lion King album. We did that.
And Renaissance.
And Renaissance as well. And, for her to be like, I still want to work with Guilty. It's great. It's amazing.
Did you have that I'm not worthy type of moments, like me, Beyonce wants to work with me?
Yeah, at the beginning I was like, wait, what does she want from me? Like, wait, what did I do? Just like, wait, how? Just it's very, very surprising. Like, I was grateful, still grateful, because that opened like a lot of doors.
Now, one of your biggest hits was Aquaba. At the time when most people were still kind of getting into the Afrobeat movement, so to say. But this was such a crossover hit. A lot of diaspora kids were into it, from the UK to the US here, then to the continent. Talk to me about that song, Aquaba. First, Aquaba means welcome in tree.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
You understand? I a little bit. Good.
Release music that's just mine. Like, as in, this is my song. I'm not producing for the artist. I'm going to feature the artist. I'm going to be like, we're going to be together on
collaborating.
The song. Yeah, we're going to be collaborating on the song because I feel like that is the future of producers. We have to evolve all the time. Yes, you have to keep evolving. You have to know that, okay, this is what I'm going to do next. This is what I'm going to be doing. So that's the idea behind the song.
So you created the beat, you constructed it?
Yeah, I made the beat out of Papi Kojo's vocals. I sent it to Mr. Easy. He was like, whoa, this is fresh, it's new. What is this? I want to be part of that. I was like, yeah, of course. Like, I sent it to him. He did his best like the next day. And, we got Patapa on it also like the following week. And we're like, okay, we're going to do like a creative animation video. So we put that together. And we just like put it out to the world and everybody was like, whoa.
Were you surprised at the reception?
It was instant.
A massive hit.
Everybody was like, we want this song today.
Yeah.
And then
the dance that came after that.
It came with the dance like that. And everybody.
That was Ghanaian music producer and DJ Guilty Beats. Esther, back to you.
Thank you very much, Jackson. Be sure to join Africa 54 every Friday for our entertainment report. And that's it from us, from all of us here in Washington. Have a fantastic weekend. Jackson, start dancing.